What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and whatever time it is, and welcome back to another video with your man, Measureaholic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my Rise of the Julia campaign for Total War Rome 2, Episode 17. Today, we're going to start off with doing a little bit of an economical overview of the Republic. We are starting to grow into a bit of a superpower throughout the Mediterranean, that is. We're starting to really get quite large, and because of that, I'm going to eventually start specializing my regions to focus on certain things economically as well as strategically and whatnot. But right now, I wanted to give you guys an overview of what our current economic situation is and my plans moving forward. So of course we're going to start first with Rome itself. The entire province is basically a trading hub for us. That is where all of our trade goes into, from Ariminum in the northeast, and then it flows down to Rome. Rome itself gives us an insane amount of taxes, just around the 10k mark, which is pretty insane. We have wine and fish being produced, and as you can see through my buildings, I'm basically devoted to trade and a little bit of resource producing as well. But besides that, Rome is basically our massive trade hub and a large portion of our taxes. Moving down to the south, we have Italia, or southern Italy. This is a very poor economic region, which is very strange since it's in Italy. However, at the moment, I'm basically making it a supplying region. It is to supply my armies heading southwest into Africa, and then of course heading east into Greece and Illyria when it comes time, hopefully soon. But besides that, it's not really producing anything. In fact, the taxes we collect from the whole province is very, very poor indeed. But it's basically a place for me to produce naval ships, and then a place to produce food and supplies for my armies moving forward. It does give us olives though, so that's worth mentioning. And the same thing is can kind of be said for Sicily. Right now, it's a little bit of a supply base, not as much as southern Italy. I do plan to convert it eventually into a trading hub and a producing hub of food primarily. So to supply Rome itself, as it did historically. Sicily was very much a big grain basket, as it were. At the moment, I have the 1st Auxiliary Legion down here, but we're going to be moving them out very shortly. But besides that, Syracuse eventually is going to be a trading hub or a military hub. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go with it. Probably trading, and I'll keep Taurus as my main military hub for now. But then we move on to Africa itself, and Carthage more specifically. Carthage is already getting us a few grand in taxes, which is very nice, but it's still only tier 2, so we're going to be getting a lot more money from Carthage and its surrounding region moving forward. I want to turn it into a recruitment center, just like Rome proper is our main recruitment center as well for Roman troops. Carthage will be the same eventually. All of the other small towns aren't really producing any resources besides a little bit of fish. So that's basically going to reflect what I'm going to build. It's going to be pretty much a really large rural producing province. Going to be providing with us a lot of food and whatnot. But yeah, not too much else to say about the region. And then we come down to inland Africa, or Fazania, as it's called. Not too much to say about this place either. I know there isn't too much to say in general, but that's because the Republic isn't really large enough for me to specialize provinces in building certain things, at least not yet. We're getting to that point shortly. Right now, we got to get some furs once we capture Titamensa, some animal furs and whatnot. And then Garama gives us some good taxes, but that's going to change shortly. And Capso over here gives us almost no taxes. It has been a really troubling region. I kind of regret holding on to it, but at the same time, I had to for strategic reasons. So, the basic summary is that Rome itself and Italy is our military might as well as our trading might. Sicily is going to become a big producer. It's going to give us iron for our troops as well as food. Africa will be doing the same, but pretty much just focusing on food and then producing manpower to provide men for the legions. And then inland Africa is eventually not really going to be doing much. Hopefully they can give us some auxiliary units eventually, such as elephants. I'm actually going to be recruiting some very soon. But for the most part, there isn't really one specific region that is crucial to the Republic. They kind of all are, because we get most of our money from taxes. You can see there we're earning well into the 30k mark, and taxes provide the majority of our income. Followed by trade, and then slavery. Slavery is earning us a lot of money, so I'm going to obviously keep capturing slaves. And then we need to expand our trade. But that's our economic summary at the moment. It's very brief, but just what I'll let you guys know. Moving forward though, the 1st Auxiliary Legion is moving into Sardinia. Followed by the 1st Republic fleet, which will be blockading Corrales down here. We're going to take the capital of Corrales, and then we'll move up north to Corsica and eventually take out that small fishing village. It's time for us to start expanding west after we get to the Menci down here in the south of Africa, or I guess the north of Africa, but south for us. I'll be sending in the 3rd Legion there. The 1st Legion, after taking the city of Garama, is extremely depleted. You can see here most of my units are extremely low in manpower, and so I'm going to be moving the 1st Legion back to the coast in an effort to try and recuperate the Legion. It is our flagship Legion, and it needs to act like it, so we need to fall back, regroup, and have it back on the assault as soon as possible. Here's an interesting development. Empress actually liberated the Masili Confederation down here. Me and Empress have some decent agreements going on. We're not allies at all, but we do have military access, trade, non-aggression, etc. So their armies are marching in and around my regions, I should say, and so they liberated that faction. And then over here we have Carthage challenging our supremacy of the Mediterranean on a naval scale. They're coming at us with a large navy. However, I'm not really willing to risk losing my fleet to this battle, even though there's a good chance we'd win. I wasn't too sure how we'd fare out going up against so many Scorpion naval units. As you can see on the right hand side, that's what the Carthaginians have a crap ton of. So I'm going to fall back, and then we will try and fight their navy on more equal terms, or more pleasing terms for us at least. More favorable, I should say. But anyway, in the meantime, the 3rd Legion is finally going to march on Tidomenci, the last stronghold of the Masili. So I wasn't too sure if I'd show you guys this battle, but I am going to, and it's for 2 reasons. One, this is probably the last time, that we'll be fighting proper Africans, as it were, or North Africans, I should say more specifically, such as the Numidians, aka the Masili. This is their last stronghold in Africa or anywhere in the world, so hopefully we'll be done with them after. I've been kind of sick of fighting them, to be honest. They've been very troublesome people to deal with. They basically have the perfect counter to what Rome has to offer, which is heavy infantry units, and they have a lot of skirmishers which deal a lot of damage. So we've lost a lot of good men taking the cities of North Africa and the villages, but hopefully this is the end of it. And the second reason is that I wanted to show you guys my basic procedure for attacking small villages, which is have my army form up in one single united front outside the town. I never split up my army, because in case situations like this happen where the enemy charges out, and they often do if you have a lot of archers, which I do in this army, and I also have cavalry, but I'm not too sure if that plays too much of a part in what the AI decides to do. But anyway, I basically just have my melee units up front in one solid line, my archers behind. I never leave them in front just in case the enemy charges very quickly, and then cavalry on the flanks. Pretty standard. A standard formation overall, but I do skip over a lot of my village battles, so I thought you guys might want to see what I do. And besides that, you saw at the start my cavalry did have to deal with a cavalry unit of the enemy who somehow spawned behind us at the start of the battle. But besides that, this is pretty straightforward. We're going to surround the enemy, who are now clumped up. They did what they usually do and began to hit my melee troops with their skirmishers, which is obviously a terrible thing. Playing as the Romans, you never want to take skirmish fire if you can avoid it, and we've seen why in past videos I've uploaded. But because I rushed my troops up, the skirmishers didn't really get a chance to deal a lot of damage. You can see my archers in the background pummeling the lightly armored troops. And then my Galatians here outflanking them, we're going to get a lot of kills. Well, a fair few, not too much in this battle actually, but in general they get a lot of kills. And the battle happens so quickly, I'm actually struggling to hand out orders to my troops. That's how quickly the enemy is going to rout. It's not that my troops are amazing, my melee troops especially are pretty mediocre. We're using Southern Italian troops, which have been historically pretty weak throughout this entire playthrough, but the combination of that, the cavalry, the lack of a general, and the archers bombarding them has just been a little bit too much, and they flee pretty easily. And we don't even need to chase them down, which is the best part, as long as they don't come back from routing. So here's a nice, beautiful close-up with the sun setting in the distance, very poetic for the end of the Massaili people, to see the sun setting on their own people, just as it is, metaphorically. But anyway, hopefully this means we're done fighting in Africa. We do have some towns to take in Morocco, and also one in the region of Capsa, but hopefully we can deal with that in this episode, at least begin dealing with that. But for Africa proper, as in Central Africa, is now entirely under our control, or our control of our friends. That was a little bit of a tongue twister. I left in the loading screen in case you guys want to see the stats. Basically, our archers do the majority of the killing, followed by our cavalry. And then our auxiliary units, such as the Galatians, usually get a lot of kills. They didn't really in this one, but they will in future battles, and they have in past battles as well. So I do need to replace these Southern Italian troops. They're just not good enough, and they die too easily. So I'll be doing that eventually. But with that, the Massaili are done. Now here we come to the Siege of Karalis. It's been a couple turns, and I have the 1st Auxiliary Legion marching on the city in conjunction with the 1st Republican Navy coming in from the sea. So we're going to be hitting them from both sides. It is a large garrison though. I'm not going to show you guys the entire battle, just give you guys the basics, because it was pretty straightforward even though they had a large garrison. The large garrison doesn't mean they're going to win, it just means we're going to take a lot of casualties. And even though my archers are doing very nicely, as you can see here, they're pummeling the enemy incredibly efficiently. They really do a lot of damage, especially when they're firing to the backs of the enemy. But the main thing is that the enemy hoplites refuse to rout for whatever reason, so I had to send in my navy, land ships, and then with that we outflanked the enemy defenders. That's the gist of it anyway. Like I said, I didn't want to show you guys because we have more important battles to get into in this episode. But as you can see, my Southern Italian units of this legion also took a lot of damage, so we're going to have to really just stop using them because they're not efficient and they're just dying. So I need to figure out a better unit to replace them with. I send the 1st Auxiliary Legion back north to take Corsica, and in the meantime we have rebellions popping up here. The city and surrounding area of Karalis is going to rebel a lot, but that's kind of a main theme that's been happening with all of our invasions. Initially when we invade, the people rebel, such as in Carthage they did a lot, but then we deal with the rebellions pretty easily. They're just a nuisance, and if they're not dealt with properly they can become a serious threat, but in general we deal with them pretty easy. Up here we're just cementing our control of Corsica, and now Corsica and Sardinia are now completely under our control. We add a new province under the command of the Roman Republic. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those two towns economically, but our first concern is dealing with the public order, of course, and then also increasing our culture. Now here we come to the real bread and butter of this video. The 1st Legion and the 1st Navy have both recuperated from their recent battles and are now marching west to take a town called Iol. I-O-L is how it's spelled. Hopefully I'm saying that right. But anyway, Carthage has a big army here, and they also have a decent sized garrison, about half strength, a little bit over. So this is going to be a bit of a tough battle, and we need to win this, otherwise they have a chance to march on straight back into Carthage itself if I lose this. And so here we are on the very, very awkward battlefield. It doesn't seem too bad at first glance, but as you look a little bit more deeply, you see just how awkward the hills and the rock outcroppings make it. The further you move up the hill, the more awkward it gets, but the bigger advantage you get against the enemy downhill. I wanted to put my whole army up on the hill, but I felt like that'd be one, a little cheesy, and two, it'd make the entire battle very, very awkward. Whereas in the position I was in now, hopefully it wouldn't be too bad. But we'll see how it goes moving forward. One big reason I wanted to camp though is because the Carthaginians have way more men than I do. Not only that, but they have cavalry, and their cavalry is better than mine. Even though I'm using auxiliaries, these are pretty poor auxiliaries, very lightly armored. They're not going to last very long against the enemy cav, as we will see on the right hand flank here. When they charge their cavalry straight into mine at the very start of the battle, and they're sending their army up the hill. But then, just a moment later, they change their mind and come charging directly at me as I move my Principes to counter their movement up the hill. So they're basically committing to an all-out assault almost instantly. I'm not really in a position to receive this charge too well. My archers are in an okay position, but they're not really close enough to my line to really get the full advantage that they should be getting. Not only that, but the cavalry's running rampant behind my flank, so that's going to cause some issues for my archers, and they're not really going to get any shots off in the time that they need to. They need to be peppering the enemy right now while they're coming towards my line, not afterwards. That's when friendly fire begins to happen. So a very awkward start to the battle. It's pretty frantic, even though it doesn't look too hectic. To me, this was really hectic to try and deal with and control. The battle is fairly spread out, and it's going to basically dissolve into a bunch of mini battles. You can see on the center and the right hand flank, that's where they're concentrating their attack. My left hand flank deals with a couple of units that they send against me very easily, and because of that they're going to be able to wrap down pretty quickly. However, I was a little bit scared of outflanking too quick because I didn't know where the enemy garrison was coming from. But then here in just a moment you can see that they're actually coming in from behind the main army. So we have a little bit of time to play with, but I do need to be careful with committing to my flanking maneuvers. We are eating away at the center of the Carthaginian army, but just as we get done eating through them and routing the enemy, their reinforcements come in and commit to the fight. And because we didn't shatter the enemy Carthaginians, a lot of them are going to come back from routing, which is basically going to unite the two armies together. The first army is pretty much done with, to be honest, but there is still a lot of men that can come in, and if they don't get hit too harshly in terms of morale, then they will stay in the fight and do some damage. So I do need to try and deal with this somehow and get the enemy to rout. And it's becoming pretty hard to deal with because my archers are all out of ammo, my ballista's about out of ammo, and I only have one cavalry unit left by the time that the enemy actually does end up reinforcing. And it's a very depleted cavalry unit at that. So here you can see just how isolated all of the fighting is. It really is clumps of Carthaginians going up against my troops. I even had to get my archers in to come and try and outflank the enemy. If I can outflank them, then hopefully they will rout easily. But it is taking time with that flank, especially on that left-hand flank uphill. So it's going to take a while. So then I do a little bit of a ballsy move and commit my general to a juicy rear charge here on the right-hand side. Immediately we can see that some of the enemy begins to rout, and with that we basically begin wrapping up the right-hand flank, which is exactly what we need. Simultaneously, my Principes on the left-hand flank get a bit of a breakthrough. They're going to begin coming in and wrapping up, and then we kind of just get enemies routing completely across the battlefield. The only troops that don't rout are their more elite and professional hoplites who are holding on the left-hand flank a little bit better than the rest of the army, but they are getting surrounded and they will get hit very hard very shortly, especially by my Galatians who are going to come in, and they get a lot of kills on the charge, especially on rear charge against spearmen. But with that, we actually do win the battle and we take very little casualties. It's very surprising. I really thought that there was a really good chance that we would lose this. I'm not too sure why I thought that. I kind of forgot how good my Principes are, I guess. But if we did lose it, the enemy had a really good chance to just march straight on back into Central Africa and hit us hard at Carthage. But thankfully here, as you can see, we're just surrounding and decimating the last few units of hoplites that are left. Kudos to them for holding on for as long as they did, but it doesn't matter. They're not getting kills. We're continuing to surround them, and we are getting kills. And that's the difference between a sword and a spear, and it is one of the reasons why the Romans were just so effective in killing and in battles. And then with that, we'd run down the enemy and we get a heroic victory. I am going to leave a loading screen in case you want to see where our kills went. Basically, across the entire board, all of our units did exceptional, except our cavalry. Our cavalry got decimated by the enemy cav. But besides that, our Principes did excellent. They didn't lose any troops, really. One of our Galatian units got ganged up on, and so it took a lot of casualties. But besides that, it's really incredible, and I'm really surprised at just how well the First Legion is doing. Keep in mind they have an excellent commander who gives them a lot of buffs. Nayasura, our leader of the Republic. But yeah, we just decimated them, and I was really surprised at this. I know I said going in, if we lose this, we could suffer some serious consequences, because Iol really isn't that far from Carthage at all. But it didn't matter. We just overran the enemy so quickly and easily. We're going to occupy Iol. We're going to get some nice resources from it. And we're going to see the major benefit of getting those resources here in a second. And that is that Egypt is finally willing to come to terms with us in trade and a non-aggression pact. Here I am actually getting an insane amount of money. Well, not insane, a pretty good sum. It looks like an insane amount, but with my sub ones I'm using, it's not that crazy. But we're getting a trade agreement with a lot of money, and they already offered me a non-aggression pact. So this is excellent. This basically means I can now completely focus on the west, deal with Carthage in Morocco and Iberia, and then we'll focus on dealing with the Adrician Kingdom somehow. That's going to be a whole other challenge altogether. But finally, my east is now secure, which is something that I've been desperately needing. So with that, we are now finally marching into the west, and hopefully we're going to see an end to the Punic Wars. Thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one.